Everybody, welcome. First of all, apologies for being a little bit tardy. For those of you expecting this to be bang on 11 o'clock UK time or 6 p.m. EST tonight, I'm afraid it wasn't. It ran a little bit late. That's a function of us having, at the moment, three au pairs, and they like the internet. And so I've had to resort to using a mobile phone, actually using a 4G signal plugged into my phone, and it took a bit of fiddling around, but it should be working fine. The light isn't brilliant. I'm actually in my bedroom. Um, this is where I got relegated to. We have one old au pair who's visiting, and we've got two for the summer because we just had a little baby. Those of you who've been following the progress of my life in general know that baby Theo was born a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, just about there actually. He was born, yeah, popped out just there. And so the light isn't brilliant here, but I think it should be okay. We're doing a week 10. It's the very interesting eat naturally, not continuously. It's an interesting concept. This is something that was pretty new to me when I first started researching this whole business of eating, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago now. Um, and some people call it intermittent fasting. Some people call it intermittent eating. I call it just eat in the natural way, the way that we are most likely accustomed to have evolved over the last several million years, to eat food when it was available and not when it wasn't. It's pretty much as simple as that. So let's crack on. Let's do a bit of the old screen share magic and see if we can show you what we're up to. Yeah, here we go. Um, all these materials are available on the Udemy site. They're available on the Google Plus or the Google Drive community that you can get to from Reasonable Eating Google Plus. You can download these all for your own perusal. I like just taking people through them anyway, so it's not a bad little idea to hear what I was thinking about when I was making these up. So anyway, here we go. Eating naturally, not continuously. What's that all about? That is all about, first of all, it's when to eat. So in when to eat, we've had eat for hunger, not appetite, and then we've had eat until no longer hungry. Those two are very interesting algorithms. I think the when to eat is possibly the trickiest domain to master because everybody can tell you what to eat and everyone can give you advice about what the most important food is and all you need to do is eat this thing and everything will be sorted. But actually, my experience, my personal, the laboratory of one, and all the people that I've spoken to and who've done the program, and all the beta testers and all the people that have been involved in the reasonable eating program, have realised that the what to eat is part of it, but it's only part of it. So much more of it is on the how to eat, the when to eat, the why to eat, and when to eat particularly is it's one of the areas that throws up most of the unusual new concepts. And this idea of eating naturally, not continuously, the goal of this is to get your body to be good or to become good at using its own reserves rather than any fresh supplies. You know, if you have any fat on your person at all, it is not biologically sensible for you to be hungry every few hours. It makes no real sense. There must be something biologically not going particularly well if you're not able to access your fat reserves. And we will get into that today. Okay, so eating naturally is more natural. It's unlikely that we evolved to have routines. It's quite possible that as we developed agriculture, we moved into a routine, much more of a routine because of the seasons, because of the daytimes, because it was probably going to be you weren't dependent on the animals moving around. You weren't so nomadic, so you would probably get into some sort of behavioral routines yourself on a daily basis, and it perhaps might make sense once you started getting agriculture going that you could save up food and you could then eat it at a later date. You'd dry it, you'd prepare it, you'd pickle it, you'd do all sorts of stuff with it. So that's quite possible, but that's relatively recently, and I don't want to get into all this paleo myth stuff where people said, "Oh, it's absolutely essential to eat just like a caveman did." Um, it might be suitable for some people to do it like that. I mean, cavemen, lived to about the age of sort of 15, 14, 15. You know, the Babylonians, only a few thousand years before Christ, were the average age or longevity was only about 19. So yes, it might be wonderful to eat that way, but we don't know how well they would have lived if they'd carried on, you know, not being killed by dinosaurs and all those things. So I love it when people say, "Oh, this is the thing to do. It's obvious. It's logical." Well, there could be some truth to it. Obviously, eating natural food, stuff that grew into its shape, is that's a huge part of what I say as well. But the idea of eating naturally, not continuously, is like, you know, basically food wasn't abundant. Food wasn't around all the time, and therefore it made a lot more sense probably for people to eat copiously when they could, and then not at all for a few days. So that's to me, here we go. It seems reasonable to assume that our bodies have evolved to cope with great variety in eating routines. It's unlikely that we're any fixed routines. Okay. Anyway, let's move on through here. Scientifically, why we have evolved to be this way, and even how we've evolved to be this way, is actually irrelevant. What we've arrived here, how we've evolved is, you know, here we go. How we actually are is how we've evolved to be. However we arrived here, this is us now, what works best. So the science seems to be fairly clear on this. Keeping everything else the same, eating continuously is associated with less beneficial effects on our long-term health than eating from time to time, eating intermittently or naturally. Okay, there's lots of studies. A study suggesting that all-day grazing does not promote weight loss. Here's a study suggesting that 2 meals per day is more effective for losing weight than eating the same calorific content spread over 6 meals per day. So there's a bunch of links for you to check out there. Again, use your discernment. Don't draw firm conclusions from any studies involving fewer than 1,000 participants and lasting fewer than 1,000 years. I think it's important for you to use your own discernment for that. Intermittent fasting, intermittent eating seems to be very beneficial. And so do your own research, click on the links and other links and do some research. But essentially what we're saying is that you should eat larger amounts but less frequently. You know, what do I do? I love it. You know, you get all these consultants and they want to explain the whole history of how your problem arose and how it came to be in this certain way. But essentially, most people just want to know, okay, tell me what to do. Most people just want to be led. Fine, fantastic. So you can tell people what to do. You can do it yourself. Larger amounts, but less frequently. Okay, not exactly helping. Tell me exactly what to do. Well, I can tell you what I do, and here we go. I won't tell you exactly what to do because I don't like telling people exactly what to do. But what I basically do is skip breakfast because I'm not hungry in the mornings. Really, everyone says breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, A, no, they don't, and B, not for me, it isn't. It's interesting. When people say, you will get this, if you tell people that you're going to skip breakfast or start skipping breakfast, you will get people say, oh, but breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So all you need to do when people say that is say, is it? I'd be interested in seeing the data set that proved that and then see what people say. Oh, well, it is. It's the most. Oh, right, okay. And if you want to get really canny with people, just say, okay, fine, fantastic. I haven't been able to find any research that says it is. So if you can show me the data set that you've used to work out that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, then I'd like you to send it to me. And you know what? As soon as you start asking people for evidence, again, no proof, there is no such thing as proof, there is only evidence. As soon as you start asking people for evidence, they shut up pretty quickly because then they realize they are dealing with a different being. They are dealing with someone who actually looks for evidence for them to take a particular course of action rather than just, oh, well, it was in the Daily Mail. Okay, for those of you who aren't in the UK, the Daily Mail is a paper that pretends to be authoritative. Well, actually, no, it is authoritative, but it pretends to have reasonable science behind what it's saying. Okay, right, anyway, this is interesting. I just tried this and I worked out that made no sense for me if I had some fat reserves to feel hungry when I woke up. I turned out I wasn't hungry when I woke up. And it made no sense for me because I thought, hang on a sec, I've got all this energy about my person, secreted about my person. Why can't I just access that? Why do I get a kind of a craving, a dip, a blood sugar drop? Why do I get that? What's that all about? And it turns out that it was the blood sugar hunger, which is genuine hunger. It's really not this. It's not appetite when you feel that dizzy, lightheadedness. It really isn't. These days, for example, today, I woke up this morning. I didn't get out of bed till quite late. It's a Sunday. We've got our au pairs over who are helping. We've got the little fella in bed with us, and it's the first few weeks and all that sort of stuff. So I rocked out of bed about 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock. Yeah, I know. You think I'm taking the mick here, but I had a shower, did all that sort of stuff. Just chilled out. Went back to bed, but went back to chill out with Cindy and Theo for a bit. Went downstairs. The girls had got the lunch out ready. It's about 1:30 when we ate. And I tell you what, when you bite into food and it's the first thing you're eating at 1:30, even celery tastes great. Carrots taste insane. They almost taste too sweet. And sugar snap peas, and you just have this stuff with hummus, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And Cindy had made some pickled beetroots. I'll post up some photos later. Made a pickled beetroots ourselves. And there, I said, yeah, this is crazy. These really do taste too sweet. Did you add sugar in the recipe? And she did. In the pickling process, the recipe suggested. She said, look, I added way less than they suggested, but it's still really quite sweet. But anyway, I don't have a craving if I don't eat first thing in the morning. I used to. Around about 11 in the morning, I used to feel, quite often I'd be literally craving a mid-morning snack. And that craving was evidence of the blood sugar problem that we actually solve when we do reasonable eating. Okay, of course, when there's a really good smell, then, like bacon and eggs, I'll go, well, that's fantastic. But these days, I can actually cook toast for the kids and not even want to have a bit of it, even with peanut butter on and everything. I don't feel the hunger. I can eat breakfast if I want, but I almost never do since I just don't actually feel hungry. Right. So what I do is, having skipped breakfast, I then eat a fairly light lunch, somewhere between 12 and 2 p.m. and eat an evening meal somewhere between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Sometimes I have a snack or two in between, but often a cup of tea will suffice. And I drink plenty of fluids between meals, of course, usually hot water. Now, I'm going through all that evidence. The belief in the PEBO, the proposed effect of breakfast on obesity, exceeds the strength of scientific evidence. So go and check this out. Have a look there. Okay. Right. I'm going to skip through this because, this is basically what I do. If I do this and it works, maybe you should try it. Those of you who say to me, I just could never do that. I could just never skip breakfast. I'm going to come straight back with why. If you are a marathon runner and you have absolutely no fat on your body, you sometimes can actually run out of the glycogen reserves. You don't have any fat reserves, so you run out of the glycogen reserves, and what happens is you hit the wall, and basically, 20 miles in, you just can't go anywhere. You've got literally no energy. But if you are not a marathon runner, where you don't have, no fat at all, in other words, you do have some fat, there's basically absolutely no reason for you to wake up hungry. No reason at all. Your body should be saying, okay, well, there's no food around. I'm going to start drawing upon my fat reserves. Now, I'm going to see if I can skip through to my thinking behind this. Okay, what happens is, here I'm going to sum it up. It turns out that the fat burning process doesn't start automatically because it isn't as efficient. It's certainly not as efficient as taking the glucose straight out of the food that we've eaten. And it's not as efficient as using glycogen stores, converting that back to glucose. So it takes a bit of time. So your body will preferentially get the glucose from recently eaten food for the first 3 to 6 hours, phase one. So usually, and this is on average, so it depends, some foods are digested much more quickly than others, but in general, the first 3 to 6 hours of eating, it's recently eaten food that's supplying you energy. Then from 6 to 12 hours, you're running off glycogen stores. And glycogen is literally, all it is the equivalent of starch in plants, but for animals. What they do in your body, your liver actually does this, and it happens in your muscle cells as well. What happens is glucose joins up into long chains, and the long chain of glucose is effectively glycogen, and there's water involved as well. It's kind of hydrolyzed, so that it ends up being, quite a heavy molecule, which is why the body doesn't like storing a lot of it. It's quite interesting. For 1 kilogram of fat, the body has to store roughly, on average, about 5 to 10 kilograms of glycogen. So it's about between 5 and 10 times as heavy to store energy in glycogen as it is in fat, but you can access it much more quickly. So it only happens that after about 12 hours you start accessing your fat reserves. So if you finish eating about 8 o'clock in the evening and go to bed, and maybe about between 10 and 12 o'clock, and then wake up the next morning around about 7 or 8 o'clock and start eating at breakfast time, you haven't really given the body any chance to start utilizing its fat reserves. So if you do this day out for like your whole life, how good will you be at something that you just never practiced? Right. So this is why it's really important. Those first 4 hours of the day after having woken up, so from about 12 hours to 16 hours after you last ate, is golden time for you to be training your body to use the fat reserves. So you think, well, if you can't not eat breakfast at all, just try pushing it back a bit. Try pushing it back to 9 o'clock and then maybe 10 o'clock, and then see how far you can go. Right. Four pieces of rice. Would you use rice to a partially cooked rice, or would you start a different pot than you guests? Right. Of course, the body can mostly a whole range of foods at different systems. First of all, carbohydrates, the digestive starts turning these complex molecules into the simpler glucose molecule, and your blood sugar. Consequently, the hormone that regulates blood sugar, insulin, is insulin